Hey folks, welcome back to the 140 Days podcast. It's February 26th here in the studio. In our last episode, we learned that the Texas House created their own version of an education savings account bill, HB3, what some of us might call a school voucher bill. In this episode, we wanted to do a deep dive into the key differences and similarities between the Senate version of an education savings account bill, which got filed and passed not long ago, and the more recent House version of this education savings account bill, aka school voucher. Hey everyone, Michael Mireles here with Victoria Fajardo. Before we begin with the comparison, I want to do a brief recap of what the Senate did with their education savings account bill. The bill was filed on the 24th of January in the Senate. It was reported out of the Senate committee, Education K through 16, with a vote of 9 yes, 2 no's, 0 present not voting, 0 absent. This was on the 29th of January. It went into the floor for a vote and passed on the 5th of February. Finally, it was referred to the Public Education Committee on the House side on the 25th of February. Victoria, talking a little bit about HB3, which is the House version of an education savings account bill. What are they doing with that bill? What are some of the key similarities and differences that we've seen?
We've put together a comparison chart. So we'll start with eligibility. For Senate Bill 2 and House Bill 3, the eligibility for both are the same, where you have to have attended public school or be eligible for pre-K. However, Senate Bill 2 has what we're referring to as the representative clause, which the language explicitly excludes children whose parent or legal guardian is a state rep, a state senator, or a statewide elected official from participating in the program.
Okay, under Senate Bill 2, if your parent is a rep, you cannot get money through the education savings account for private school tuition.
That's right.
Okay, Victoria, so tell me about priority. How are folks prioritized under these two bills?
For Senate Bill 2 and House Bill 3, priorities both kick in if there are more applicants than there are funds.
Okay.
However, where you start having differences is that for Senate Bill 2, 80% of the spots are reserved for children who have attended public school for at least 90% of the prior year, and those who are from low-income households or children with disabilities. The remaining 20% of spots are for all other eligible applicants.
And for the House side?
For the House side, there is a lottery system. And this lottery system prioritizes applicants in a very specific order.
Okay.
So at the top is children with disabilities in a household at or below 500% of the federal poverty guideline.
Mm-hmm.
And then following that is children in households that are below 200% of the federal poverty guideline. And then after that are children that fall between 200 and 500% of that guideline. And then finally, you have children in households that are above 500% of the federal poverty guideline.
So on the House side, the way that they're prioritizing folks is children with disabilities who are in impoverished households. And then it moves into children who don't have disabilities but are in even more impoverished households. And then finally, you're getting kids who aren't necessarily in impoverished households. And then the final category of prioritization is just anyone who applies.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
How are funds allocated for these bills?
For Senate Bill 2, they're fixed amounts.
What does that mean?
So that means that a majority of students will receive a flat $10,000. However, on the House bill, most enrolled students will receive a percentage of what the average per student funding already is in the state. They specifically say that enrolled students get 85% of what an average public student already gets.
In the event that per student funding goes up in a given year, that means that students enrolled in the House's version of this education savings account program will have more money in the account.
Mm-hmm.
And if per student funding in public schools goes down in a given year, then folks enrolled in the House program will get less.
Yes.
Okay. How much does a public student get in funding?
According to the Texas Tribune, without federal dollars, the number is $12,815, meaning voucher program participants could receive about $10,893 each year.
That's really close to the Senate's $10K base.
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
What about students with disability?
Students with disabilities in Senate Bill 2 and House Bill 3 both have extra funding options. The difference is the cap amount. For Senate Bill 2, the cap amount is $20,000, whereas House Bill 3, it is $30,000.
Okay, so on the House side, there's a little more wiggle room for more money for students with disabilities.
Correct.
Okay. What about students who are homeschooled?
So they both get $2,000 per year. However, on the House bill side, you get an additional $500 if your child is disabled. So for Senate Bill 3, the Legislative Budget Board provided an estimated cost for policies like these for the Senate and the House. They have provided their assessment in a report given to the Senate that this was going to cost $4.5 billion by 2030. They only assess impact on the state's revenue. They don't mention how a program like this would affect other sectors in the state, like, for example, the public school system. Michael, are there any other costs we're not considering?
One thing is how much direct money the state is using to fund a program like this. I know that the state of Texas likes to brag about how much they have in surplus every other year. In reality, it's not much of a surplus if our public school systems are severely underfunded. But I also mentioned that when you take into consideration student enrollment and how that plays a big role in funding for public schools, the numbers get a little scarier. Every Texan is a statewide, nonpartisan policy organization. They've provided an analysis that details the projected loss of funding to Texas public school districts should 1, 3, or 5% of students accept a voucher. Victoria, give me a school district.
Let's do McAllen.
According to Every Texan, if a large voucher program is implemented in McAllen ISD, it would drain around $8 million from the school district.
That's a lot of teacher salaries.
Like I mentioned before, it's not just the impact that these bills would have on the state's revenue. There are real costs that Senate Bill 2 and House Bill 3 will have on public school funding.
So we've seen both Senate Bill 2 and House Bill 3, and we've compared the both. What is next for House Bill 3?
Well, Victoria, as it happens almost every single time that we start recording, we just got word that on the House side, a number of Republicans have signed on to essentially co-sponsor House Bill 3. What this means is that they're signaling that they're ready to support and push the bill when it goes for a vote. Currently, there are 76 folks total on the Republican side who have signed on for this bill. That is enough votes already if this bill were to go for a vote tomorrow to pass House Bill 3. I also want to mention that in terms of local representatives, the only Valley representative who signed on in support of House Bill 3 at this time is Janie Lopez, Republican from House District 37, which touches a little bit of San Benito, but really is all of Cameron.
Didn't Janie Lopez work for San Benito ISD?
She did, which is really unfortunate. She was actually the school board's vice president. And according to Every Texan, this bill would drain around $3.7 million from San Benito CISD.
So it just got referred to the Public Education Committee. Do we have any idea of when it's going to go for a hearing or for a vote?
It looks like it's going to be heard in committee the week of March 3rd.
Sounds like we'll be making a trip up to Austin soon.
That's right. Victoria, thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here too, Michael. You can catch the 140-Day podcast on our website at lupanet.org, on YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and X at lupe_RGV and our Facebook at La Unión del Pueblo Entero.